Hello friends, welcome to UGC EPG program. I am Dr. L. Mirana Devi from Department of Geography, Syed Bhagat Singh Evening College, University of Delhi. Today, we are going to discuss on management of chemical and industrial disaster in India. The chemicals play a very important role in human life and have contributed enormously in our day-to-day routine. Directly or indirectly, with the events of globalization and rapid industrialization, a phenomenal increase has been observed in chemical industries all over the world. However, in parallel to industrial growth, the risks of occurrence of chemical incidents leading to disaster have also increased in multiples. Chemicals or industrial disasters may be traumatic in their impact on human beings and have resulted in the casualties and also damages nature and properties. The elements which are at highest risk due to chemical disaster primarily include the industrial plant, its employees and workers, hazardous chemicals, vehicles, the residents of nearby settlements, adjacent buildings, occupants and the surrounding community. In addition to loss of life, the major consequences of chemical industrial disaster include impact on livestock, flora and fauna, and the environments. The vulnerability is further compounded by operation of industrial plants which are poorly maintained, not ready to handle the extreme conditions. The other major concerns are linked with manufacturing, storage, installations, poor waste management and especially the movements of harmful chemicals through transport vehicles and railway lines which may encounter the unsafe conditions while in motion. The residents are highly vulnerable if they do not know the possible dangers and have no escape plan. There might be typical adverse effect of chemicals explosions which may cause the destruction of infrastructure, especially buildings. The industrial fires may reach very high temperatures and affect large areas that may kill many people with considerable injuries. Many of the affected people may also require emergency medical treatment. Harmful substances released into water or into the air may travel long distances and contaminate water supply, air, soil, crops and livestock, making the affected area uninhabited for humans. Further, due to chemical industrial disaster, the wildlife may be destroyed and ecological systems are disrupted. This is the major reason of concern for ecological and environmental imbalance. Now, let us know the status of chemical industrial disaster risks in India. In India, the increasing use of hazardous substances by industrial units with inadequate safety infrastructure has raised serious concern over industrial plant, safety of workers in factory premises and home workers operating from small establishments. Hazardous chemical vehicle, residents of nearby settlements, adjacent buildings, occupants and the surrounding environments, including livestock, flora and fauna, are also considered vulnerable. There are numerous cases of the release of hazardous substances into water or in air that had traveled long distances and contaminated water supply, air, soil, crops and livestock, making the affected area uninhabited for humans and livestock. Therefore, extreme care is warranted in handling of chemicals at all stages of manufactures, processing, package, storage, transportation, sale, use and disposals. India has witnessed the world's worst chemical or industrial disaster. Bhopal gas tragedy on December 2nd and 3rd in 1984. The Bhopal gas tragedy was the most devastating chemicals accident in the history wherein over 2,500 people died due to the accidental release of toxic gas methyl isocyanate, that is MIC, which is still fresh in our memories. The Bhopal disaster is also known as the Hiroshima of chemical industry. Such accidents are significant in terms of injuries, pain, suffering, loss of lives, damage to property and environments. India continued to witness a series of chemical accidents after Bhopal and demonstrated the vulnerability of country. Apart from it, our country has faced 4 major chemical accidents that took place during the last 30 years, including an explosion in IPCL gas crackers complex at Nagothane in Maharashtra in 1990, vapor cloud explosions at HPCL refinery at Visakhapatnam in 1997, fire in an oil well in Andhra Pradesh in 2003, and IOCL fire tragedy of Jaipur in October 2009. Only in the last decade, 130 significant chemical accidents reported in India, which resulted into 259 deaths and 563 numbers of major injuries. Management in India, 2011, Ministry of Home Affairs, despite the historical Bhopal disasters and innumerable gas leak, the explosions and accidents report over the years, including Jaipur oil depot fire, Bombay Port Trust chlorine leak, Sivakasi explosions, Surat IOC fire and East Godavari NG pipelines leak are still continue in the country, even after notifying the act, and the largest community is still vulnerable. Moreover, people are not adequately aware of the risks with which they are living right now. Let us also discuss about the safety initiative taken in India to address chemicals or industrial risks. India is among those few countries of the world which have preserved the right to live in a clean and wholesome environment as a fundamental right. The Factories Act was enacted in 1948 for ensuring safety, health, welfare at the workplace. However, chemical industries disaster management received greater emphasis the world over only after the Bhopal disaster in 1984. Recognizing the need of mainstream environmental and chemicals or industrial concerns in all developmental activities, a separate Ministry of Environment and Forest was created in 1985 and was declared as the Northern Ministry for the Management of Chemicals or Industrial Disaster. Later, an umbrella act, the Environment or Protection Act in 1986, EP Act was enacted, which also deal with chemicals management and safety. Under this EP Act, two rules have been notified for ensuring chemical safety. Number 1, manufacture, storage and import of hazardous chemicals rule 1989, amended in 1994 and 2000s. Number B, chemical accidents, that is emergency planning, preparedness and responses rule 1996, which we call it EPPR rules. Regulations provide institutional framework for enforcement of chemical safety and emergency management with technical support from bodies like Petroleum and Explosives Safety Organizations, PNGRB, etc. It involves various central or state ministry departments by Ministry of Environment and Forests, supported by Central Pollution Control Board and Emergency Response Centers, Ministry of Home Affairs, supported by NDMA, Ministry of Labour and Employment, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers, Ministry of Shipping, Road, Transport and Highways, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Defense and others. Let us also find out what are the institutions set up for chemicals industrial disaster management in India. The above set up depict the institutional mechanisms to address the chemical industrial disaster management in India at a state as well as at the national level. Further, in order to promote excellence in chemical safety and allied domains amongst the industry, the concept of award and recognition like National Safety Award, SSE Award, Suraksha Puraskar, ICC Award, State Level Industrial Safety Award, etc. is being followed since long. The effort have been supported by the northern industrial bodies and safety councils like NSC, FICCI, CII, ICC, ASSO, CSAM, PhD Chamber and Commerce and Industry, etc. The same has been appreciated by concerned ministry, including Ministry of Labour and Employment, Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Environment and Forest, Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers, state governments and allied governments and private or corporate entities. In 2007, National Disaster Management Authority, that is NDMA of India, had come out with very specific guidelines on the chemical industrial disaster management. This has proved to be a path-breaking step pertaining to chemical industrial disaster management in India. In 2010, NDMA had come out with another important guidelines in relation to strengthening of safety and security for transportations of pure oil tankers. This guidelines has been prepared to provide the directions to ministry, departments and state authority for the preparedness of their detailed disaster management plans. This guidelines call for a proactive, participatory, well-structured, fail-safe, multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral approach at various levels. Further, the exclusive chapters in guidelines on the chemicals or industrial institutions, chemicals, installations, storage, transportations, operations, gap and mechanisms for implementations provide a very solid platform towards the chemicals or industrial safety in India. Gaps and challenges. Following are the vital gaps and major challenges need to be addressed for a robust chemical disaster management in India. Number one, chemical industrial safety is a major concern in unorganized sector where the workers also deal with hazardous chemicals, but they are not aware of the risks posed by hazardous substances. Generally, in this sector, neither Factories Act nor any other rules or policy is applicable directly because in most cases, the strength of workplace is shown less than 10. Number two, based on the Central Act, the state have notified their own rules which are yet to be debated with subject to chemical accidents prevention, preparedness and mitigations. It is a big challenge to bring out clarity on complex reporting structure, roles and responsibilities of concerned stakeholders including ministry, department, industry and NGOs. Number three, national and zonal, regional level training institutions are struggling for the resources like adequate manpower and infrastructures. They need to be further upgraded because right now there are about 1,864 MAS units and there are many SMEs exist in the country. There is no standard database at national, state or district level with reference to all chemical entities and its expected disaster management requirements. Number 5, there are very few chemical industries units in our country which has state-of-the-art technology with adequate safety margins, including the backup system and fail-safe materials of constructions. The advanced instrumentations like DCS, there is distributed control system is also essentially required, which can directly take corrective actions without operating itself. Number 6, in India, there are no heavy penalty provisions for defaulters of safety norms. Usually, the defaulters get away with a meager penalty amount which does not encourage the safe environment. Generally, routine safety checks are also not carried out seriously by agency. Number 7, there are not enough budget for safety provisions. Fund to be earmarked for the activities to strengthen chemical disaster management routed by respective departments or entities. Number 8, the enforcement of public liability insurance, that is PLI Act, is an issue which need to be strengthened at the earliest. There is a serious lack of awareness of existence and provisions of the Act among stakeholders. Further, the statutory provisions to be strictly implemented and immediate relief under the PLI Act need to be revisited. Number 9, chemical disaster issue are looked after the Department of Labor at state levels, whereas at central level, Ministry of Environment and Forest is the northern ministry under various statutes and law. In addition, there are other role players as well, but looking at broadly, we will find that it lacks multi-stakeholder involvement in policy making, planning and implementations. Number 10, there is a big challenge in educating the stakeholders and providing appropriate training and developing their capacity. There are no special courses for them. The standard material safety data set are generally quite complex, which need to be further simplified in vernacular language. It seems to be lack of coordinate or knowledge exchange. Training capacity building part. CIDM is not integrated with educational program and provisional courses. Number 11. Along the recent IT developments, geoinformatic tools, recent lessons, updated guidelines for the preparedness of the offset emergency plan is synergized with district disaster management plan is a missing link. Moreover, offsite emergency plans are not being adequately followed. Number 12, national disaster induced scenarios including safe structures, storage, etc. are expected to be part of subsequent planning and design concern, but it is adequately addressed. Number 13, multi-stakeholders partnership amongst the government, local administrations, corporate or industries, media, NGO and community is not happening because which is actually the way forward and effectively contributed towards the sustainability. Number 14, there are loopholes in dumping the hazardous chemical waste and number of industries are still dumping the hazardous waste in surrounding vicinity, which can lead to many more Bhopal tragedy like situation in India. Number 15, there is also a need to involve a national framework for effective planning and monitoring of CIDM in India. The short, medium and long-term planning and implementation of modules on CIDM had to be produced and rigorously followed. According to the requirements, infrastructures need at various levels and stages. Proposed measures. To address this pertinent issue, following proposed safety measures have to be taken into consideration. Number 1, institutional measures are very crucial in order to set the tone of the entire process of chemical disaster management in India. The following steps have to be taken up under it. Devise a roadmap with actions plan for institutionalizations, implementation and review of national guidelines on chemical industries disaster management developed by NDMA. The guideline is to be reviewed periodically. While reviewing the same, the latest international conventions, the changing global scenario and associated probable risks also to be considered and addressed. Number 2, comprehensive institutional mechanisms for unorganized sector to be devised by DGFA, SLI with support from bodies like NSC, NIOS on the occupational safety and health aspects. The focus should be on the localized risks and behavior-based safety, which can be emphasized through analytical research, survey and study of this sector also involving the institutions. Number 3, upgradations of specialized national or state level institute in the field of chemical industrial disaster management, which can be undertaken training capacity building, research consultancy and advocacy activities in order to support the government and the entire chemical industry. Further, at the zonal or state level, specialized institutions with adequate capacity, sufficient resources and upgraded infrastructure to be institutionalized. Number 4, integration of state and district disaster management plan on chemical or industrial aspect along with standard operating procedures is interlinked with state and district level natural disaster management plan and regularization of the same in line with a comprehensive national level contingency plan. Number 5, medical emergency management plan should be the inherent part of the onset and the offset emergency plan. It should also contain the list of toxicant and the hazardous effect, availability of the antidotes, personal protective equipments, medical equipments, patient evacuations plan, the concept of mobile hospitals to be promoted. Further, dedicated team of the medical expert to be made available to handle emergency pertaining to CIDM. Number B, Regulatory measures are access drivers for implementations and adherence of robust chemical disaster management mechanism in the country. The following points need to be addressed under it. Number 1. Adherence of the offset emergency plan is essential as per the MSIAC rules in 1999, Schedule 12. The district collector is required to oversee, govern and update the offsite emergency plan for industrial pockets in consultations with all stakeholders. The draft plan should be prepared by concerned hazardous unit and approved by district administrations. The same should be rehearsed at least once in a year in a required manner through mock drill. Number 2, Emergency Response Center to be mandated ERC under the Chemical Accidents Rule. Under the Chemical Accidents Rule 1996, ERC should be integrated with medicals, fire, civil defense, NDRF, SDRF, police and emergency responder in order to cater to emergency involving hazardous chemicals. Number 3, strict provisions to be made to penalize the defaulter unit in case of the non-adherence of Factories Act 1948, EP Act 1986, PLI Act 1991 and other allied rules like MSIAC, EPPR, etc. and regulations pertaining to chemical safety, prompt action to be taken against defaulters. Chemical units which are dumping hazardous waste in unsafe manner also to be penalized. Number C, preparedness measures are highly critical, being the integrated part of the entire chemical disaster management process. These measures play a very important role to address risk management on the ground. The following point to be addressed under the same. Number 1, measure accident hazard unit-wise. A comprehensive risk mapping has to be carried out according to applicable risk to the society. Hazardous chemical category-wise standards, operating procedures have to be laid down at the district level through district crisis group. Further, at the sub-district level, specific guidelines to be issued and disseminated amongst stakeholders through the local crisis group. Number 2, to optimize resources, a comprehensive disaster management resources network has to be developed under which a database has to be maintained, which will provide locations-wise inventory status of the available manpower, including volunteers, equipments, and other allied informations. DRMN will supplement initiative of mature aid response group in industrial pockets and will also promote the concept of pooling of resources. Number 3, to strengthen existing capacity at district levels, the emergency operations centers to be fully equipped with all required means of communications and coordinations during emergency, including dissemination procedure of warning, contact list of nodal persons. Number 4, to educate different stakeholders, including plant employees, field workers, NGOs, community representatives, specific training modules to be developed on chemical disaster management. Based on that, periodic trainings and retrainings programs to be conducted. Number D, operational measures. Looking at the current CIDM scenario in India, it is clearly observed that operational measures including industrial or chemical installations, shortage and transportation of hazardous chemicals and on-site safety are the prime area of concerns. To address this crucial operation issue, the following point to be addressed. Number 1, industrial or chemical installation and storage of hazardous materials are highly critical. To address this pertinent issue, the regular testing of critical equipments, HAZOP, that is hazard operability, hazard analysis, study to be carried out for the early identification of hazards. Further, subsequent action to be taken to address the concerned issue. Number 2, for safer transport of hazardous chemicals, the MAS units are recommended to follow certain procedures prescribed under the NDMA guidelines. These guidelines cover specific technical instruction for safe transportation of hazardous chemicals by rail, road, air, marine or pipelines, etc. Number 3, land use planning considerations to be taken into account while routing the hazardous substances through new pipelines, and also prior to the new construction in the vicinity of existing pipelines, further a pipeline management system to be implemented for better operational control and monitoring purposes, including pipelines, inspections, functioning of equipments, periodic audit and planning for emergency. Number 4, it is to be ensured that SMEs, small and medium enterprises dealing with hazardous materials generally located in periphery of urban cities should not access safety limit of buffer stock of hazardous chemicals. Hence, these situations can lead to a potential chemical disaster because in this SMEs normally safety mechanism is not so stringent comparing to bigger organizations or corporate. Number E, funding and insurance measures. Funding allocation is key to addresses the institutional, regulatory, operational and preparedness measures. Following key point to be addressed under it. Number 1, concerned ministry need to earmark fund to strengthen chemical disaster management activities in India. Example, funding provisions to be made by one ministry for institutionalizing of chemical disaster management related national or state level technical training institute, resources allocations and further up gradation and strengthenings of the same on priority. Number 2, extend supposed toward preparations of exclusive disaster management plans, off-site plan, provide trainings, conducting mock drills in line with chemical aspect, further equipment emergency operation centers, DCGs, LCGs, inventorization at district sub-district level. Number 3, MAI's installations are required to take third-party insurance under PLI Act for providing relief to victims in case of chemical accidents. Further, for carrying the hazardous chemical, the provision of insurance of driver, attendants and the vehicles is said to be strictly ordered. F, building sustainability through multi-stakeholders partnership. For real success of chemical disaster management, it is essential to have a multi-stakeholders partnership among partners. After paradigm shift from release-centric approach to prevention, preparedness and mitigations, role of stakeholders have become very crucial. The government, including district admin, local community, NGOs and chemical units, all players have to come forward and work together the chemical safety. In the recent past, a gap has been observed quite often between chemical units and the local communities. This needs to be addressed at the earliest for the safety of everyone here, especially the chemicals units who come out of their plant cell to sensitize the surrounding community and other stakeholders. In general, NGOs are very near to common man as they work with community at the grassroots level. Therefore, NGOs' presentation in local crisis group is highly important to bring issue on board to the notice of government, including district level admin, chemical units or corporate and allied local agency. Finally, it is government job to govern and oversee implementation of chemical disaster management and the adherence of regulatory mechanisms for safety and security of everyone in line with the same. Major responsibility of the stockholders for management of chemical industrial disaster. Number 1, chemicals or industrial unit as part of the major risk prone unit. This should specifically address the following. Number 1. Number A, units should adopt advanced technology which should include risk mapping, testing of critical equipments, safe handling of chemicals and periodic in-plant safety check, etc. B, comprehensive emergency plan to be prepared and follow across plan, including roles and responsibility of all the concerned. C, address community safety rigorously through initiatives like corporate social responsibility, trained NGOs, community representative, nodal officer to deal with emergency situations. All chemical hazardous units should take their third-party insurance to provide relief to victims. E, hazardous chemical units should also have business continuity planning in place. F, train and retain employees and contract workers periodically on safety aspect 2A, government is the body which governs the entire process should address the following. A. Institutions CIDM process develop policy guidelines for effective emergency planning. B. Oversee the adherence of applicable law, periodic review of guidelines, acts and rules, devise mechanisms for inspection of risk-prone unit and associated chemical safety parameters. C. Design programs on CIDM awareness, push the chemical unit and local authority for the same. D. Funding provisions for CIDM initiatives to maximize outstretched allot budget for emergency centers. 2B. District authorities, being the nodal agency at unit level, district authorities should address the following. A. Responsible for institute emergency plan, various departments and community to be trained and equipped to deal with such disaster. B. Facilitate district and local crisis group to strengthen emergency preparedness response. C. Equip emergency operations center to meet all communication and coordination requirements. Optimize resources, that is manpower, equipments by maintaining disaster management resource network. D. Institution government initiative for community awareness by various communications means. Third, NGO have very crucial role to play in CIDM. They should address the following points. Bring concerned safety issue or community on board through local platforms to district amine and chemical unit. B. Work in partnership with all the stakeholders, assist, that is chemical unit, amine in community awareness. C. Assist chemical unit and amine in preparedness and implementation of emergency planning. D. Get trained fast and later sensitize school, hospital and vulnerable community on CIDM. 4. Community being the most vulnerable entity should keep notice of the following point. A. Should follow the safety precautions recommended by chemicals unit, district amines and NGOs and provide support in volunteers activities. B. From citizens task force or similar group, after getting trained in fast aid, search and rescue, the deal emergency including early warning disseminations in vicinity by local communications means. C. Train other members back at home to deal with disaster situation. D. Report unsafe observations like chemical spillage, leakage, fire accident, etc. to district or locals or crisis group members or NGOs or RWS or police in the vicinity. So, apart from individuals' responsibility of all the key stakeholders, further by developing the multi-stakeholders partnership amongst all the partners through platforms such as district levels and local levels, crisis group, the suitability of chemical industrial disaster management can be enhanced further and last long successfully and effectively for a safer tomorrow. Thank you.